detail, the stories. Most of you guys who are younger than me and Gary don't remember what it was like to go on a family trip and then come back and sit through night after night after night of having friends over and giving them your vacation slideshow, which was torture. So we're going to share that with you tonight, okay? This is just going to be a good old-fashioned round table. We're going to start going through pictures, and we're just going to tell stories on top of each other, and we encourage you to interrupt us along the way and ask questions. We're going to try and explain some of what you saw up there that you couldn't see because of the detail, etc. But before we do that, since we've already opened in prayer, thanks, brother, we're going to start in worship. And there's a particular song, and there's a reason I chose it. And I'll share that with you as we're going through. And it's not because it's his favorite song. So if you all will join us, we're going to let...
So before we start singing, so we're going to share our adventure. Okay, the adventure is the fun part. And we needed the adventure in order to get to where we needed to do what God called us to do.
Amen.
So as we tell the story of what we did, we're also going to hopefully share some God moments. Because there was a lot of them. So that's what we're looking forward to sharing. Not only the adventure, which was incredible, but the God moments. And there's a lot of them. And you guys are a part of it.
Go ahead, James. So join the sources of continual encouragement
and laughter,
youthful laughter and joy. Right. Thank you. No, it's yours in case it runs out.
So this is going to be all impromptu. Rob has been working on the pictures. We have no idea what he's going to put up there.
All they know is that it's in chronological order.
Chronological order.
That's right. So I don't know who this obviously was taken. Most of y'all have seen this. It's from when all of our families dropped us off at the airport. And to be honest with you, I can't speak for these guys. I guarantee you it was hardest on the man in yellow.
And his wife.
Yeah. But we're going to rectify that, boss. We got a sweet send-off, lots of encouragement, a little tears. But at that point, we were pretty charged up.
So I just want to start tonight. This is my fourth mission trip. Third out of country, I've done one in Nashville. And I know that people pray for us. I mean, I know it. But this trip felt different. I've never had this much feeling of warmth and comfort and love and prayer from not only you, but from outside of these four walls, throughout the country and in Peru. Never in my trips before have I felt this much love. Just before we left, the Ezels came up to us and gave us this. She said she was worried that we were going to get hurt and that she'd been praying for us. And she soaked 4x4 bandages in peroxide and wrapped them in a plastic baggie and then sealed it. Wrapped it in another plastic baggie and sealed it. Wrapped it in another plastic baggie and sealed it. And then gave it to us. And said that she had been praying over this thing constantly. And she will continue to pray for us while we are on our trip. Because if we get hurt, she wants to make sure that we can clean our wounds so we don't get infected. I told her that we weren't going to need it because prayer covered. And that I was going to bring it back home unsealed. Not a scratch on us. Thank you. That's a God moment.
Okay, so I'm a map freak. It's a military thing. Jordan Latimer, who's 28 years old from Dallas, Plano actually, he goes to Matt Chandler's church. I had the blessing of serving with him last December in Tarapoto. And Jordan was the fifth of the six of us. Paul Colburn was the leader, American leader of the trip. He's from Alabama. He's who Gary and I and Mary Kay and Jill have been on all of our trips with. But Jordan found at the University of Texas's website topo maps of where we were going. I was in heaven. So just because it's me and I'm weird this way, I'm going to show you guys where we went. Okay, so the two circles at the top circle is Nashville, the next circle down is Atlanta, and then it's 3,500 and some odd miles to Lima, which is the bottom circle, almost due south of Nashville and Atlanta. We flew in there and got there late on Friday night, spent the night, and flew the next day from Lima to Tarapoto. So Lima's right on the coast. It's like San Diego is the weather. It hasn't rained there, really rained. I mean, it gets mist and fog, but it has not rained there in 2 decades. We go over the Andes Mountains and land in Tarapoto. And I want you guys to think Smoky Mountains tropical. Okay, so it's as high as the Smoky Mountains. And it's where the Andes, the foothills of the Andes, are ending at the western edge of the Amazon basin. So that's Tarapoto over there on the left. The squiggly line, the first one represents our van ride from there to Chisuta, which we'll get to in a second. And then from Chisuta, we went down the Huallaga River to where the arrow ends to a town called Achina Mesa. The reason I show you this photo is because it's the exact same thing, but you see the white things are clouds. And you can see Tarapoto over there in the middle on the left-hand side, Chisuta down there at the bottom, and you see that little blue snake that's heading out, and it works its way out of those mountains. That is the Smoky Mountains. So we're literally right on the edge of the Amazon basin. And this photo is to show you where we went. So we land at the little red dot that's lowest in the right-hand corner, and our adventure begins getting to the next dot in 1 day. After that, the next 3 dots, the 3 that are farthest to the north and the west, are the 3 villages that we visited.
You
have to hold it up to you.
When we started with this is at John, the Peru leader. This is at his house, and we got in this van, and there were 15 of us in this van, and all of our bags were on top of it. And the next picture, that's just one of us riding. I can try. But this is just us riding in the van, going down the road that he showed you all the way to Chisuta. We took his van the whole way there. This is what the road looked like. They had landslides all the time, and like when it rains there, it's all the soil's so loose. When it just rains, like there'll be like hundreds and hundreds of feet of landslides. So you come around the corner of the van, and there'd just be like a road crew in the road, clearing the road out. This once we got to Chisuta, we got in this boat, and it started raining right when we got there. So we get in this boat, and luckily the guy had a roof on it. But we took that boat for about roughly 3 hours to the next place where we stopped.
And that's the first video you see of the river, is this boat.
And our motor was a weed eater, pretty much.
Yeah. You guys who duck hunt, you guys know what go devils are. So it's a long shaft prop, just like a weed eater, and then it's got a propeller on the end of it so that it doesn't go very far down deep into the water.
So now there's still 15 of us. We're going to pick up 2 more. So in the van, we were all crammed in there. And this is where, this is another what I'll call a God moment. And it's going to complete itself in about a day and a half from now. We don't know anybody. we know each other from church, know Paul. I've met John once before. I've never met Jordan. He's on the trip. He's the other American. All these Hispanic people in here, absolute strangers to me. I don't know them from Adam. And this is what God does. He takes 17 people who don't know each other, beats the crud out of them, turns it into a team. So this picture of 15 individuals and strangers in about a day and a half is going to become one strong team. And it's because of what God's getting ready to do to us.
Amen. Zach's looking good, isn't he? Yeah.
That was a long 3 hours.
Four-wheel road that's probably designed for 3. Or 2.
But that boat stretched from here to the back row. It is a big old boat.
And I'll be honest, I was disappointed at this point. I think the rest of us were also, because it was raining. And we had the roof on, and then all the little campus sides are not down yet. They're getting ready to be, because once we got moving, the rain just came in. So all the and you couldn't see through them. They're old, and you can't see through them anymore.
So we got stuff looking at Gary.
So here I have, I've traveled 3,500 miles. I'm getting ready to trek into the jungle, and I can't see anything.
That's because of the big old fellow who's sitting right in front of you.
The rain and everything, we just couldn't enjoy the scenery, but I guess God heard my grumbling, because in about an hour and a half, He released the rain enough where we could roll the
Y'all just be thankful you weren't sitting in the front, because I was soaked.
But it was interesting. Every time we traveled, and you'll see all our different modes of travel. By the way, John Candy has nothing on us.
Amen.
Planes, trains, and automobiles is just 1/10 of what we traveled in. But every time we traveled, we're like, okay, where's the rest? Okay, you got a van, where's the other van? You got a boat, where's the other boat? It's like they always supply us with just barely enough that we all had to squeeze in with all our stuff. And we
talk about changing our perception. That was probably the first example of changing our perception, because John Linares would say, no, this is it. We got it. We have to fit in here. And at the end, you're going to see the dumbest thing he did was at the end. I want to introduce you to a couple of people. So this is Paul Colder. We'll talk more about Paul. Paul's been a full-time missionary for the last 4 or 5 years. He was director of missions at First Baptist Pelham for a while. That's where Nan and Charles started off. That's where Sam Nugent, who you've heard Ronnie talk about. And Paul is down working with Curtis Sargent, who is a career IMB missionary, helped plant over 100,000 churches in Southeast Asia and China. Paul's working with him at a place they call Meta Camp, where they train people to go and make disciples. So he does that part-time, and then the other part of the time he leads E3. He's a church plant coordinator, or church planter with E3. Paul is about, maybe 5 foot nothing, okay? And he's just awesome.
Looks like he's having a good time.
Oh, yeah. And this is Jordan. So Jordan's 28. And last December was Jordan's second mission trip. His first one had been about 8 years before in China. And different story. Jordan really ministered to me in December when we were in Terracotta, which is where we flew into for this. Paul describes him as steady. Nothing. At 28 years old, nothing rocks Jordan. He is so at peace, so surrendered to God using him in his life. To give you an example, he's been working in the financial sector after graduating Texas A&M for the last several years. And the day he got back, he quit his job. He's going to med school, and his intent is to become a full-time missionary.
Probably with doctors and orders.
Yeah. And this is the infamous John Linares. Any of you guys want to tell a story about John?
You want to do it? You guys are going to talk more tonight.
Well, I don't care to talk.
So John Linares, first off, we're going to talk a lot about John in the coming months. And just be in prayer for something. Be in prayer that you get to meet him personally. We're working diligently at getting him to come here and visit us. He's coming to the United States in September.
That's right.
And he only has a certain amount of dates to visit everything, and we are working hard to get him to come visit you. So we're going to talk a lot about him in the coming months. E3 doesn't just throw a dart on a map and say, hey, let's go to the Amazon jungle and spread the gospel. What E3 does is they have partners all around the world, nationals, who live in all these places that E3 goes to.
Churches.
And,
Actual churches.
Actual, right. And they're nationals in those countries, and they're part of the E3 ministry team. He's self-funded through donations and such, how he is funded. Him and his wife and 2 children live in Sarasota. And his job is to find local churches, local pastors in the Amazon region, which he has the largest landmass of any other E3 missionary in E3's personnel file. But his job is to find local pastors who have a vision. Either their church is dying, or their church is trying to build, or their church is trying to plant a new church, or their church wants to go into the Amazon jungle.
And reach unreached.
And reach unreached people. So that's his job. And he finds them people and then says, hey, I got a bunch of silly Americans in Lobelville, Tennessee that would love to come join you. And he brings us together, and we become a team, and we go to wherever those pastors have a vision. So that when we leave, there's not a void. There's already that vision, that energy that's already created, and that's John's job. And he is on fire for Christ. An incredible young man who is on fire for Christ. And really do love him. And hopefully you get to meet him sometime, because he loves Christ and does everything he can. His whole life, this is all he does.
He's locked in. He's coming here Wednesday, September the 9th. He flies into Birmingham a day or 2 before that. We're going to drive down and get him, bring him up here. He's going to share here in the church on Wednesday night, September the 9th. So you get a chance to hear him and see him. Like Gary said, just an awesome man. Between him and this other young man right there, they're the heartbeat of E3's work in the Amazon.
When we go, there were 6 of us, so actually we had our own translator, there were 6 of them. Lenny, the shorter guy, was Jordan's translator. And Lenny does a lot of work with John. When John used to teach at the university, he taught English, and Lenny was one of his, I don't know if Lenny was one of his students, but all the other guys that went with us were one of his students, so that's how he supplies the translators. And when they're also, they bring pastors in, so when we leave, like you said, that there wouldn't be a hole, but there'd always be somebody there, you know, starting a church and building it up and everything. Well, we brought 5 pastors with us, and there originally going to be 6, but one of them ended up not going, but 5, all of the guys who went with us they were real deal. They were really on fire for God, and they were, I mean, it was amazing to watch them work. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but I knew the gist of it. Well,
Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
Lenny, go back to that picture. That's the guy we've been praying for on Wednesday night. You guys been there Wednesday night. Zach worked with his translator. And all you guys did. He's the only believer in his family. He prays. He said, pray every night for my wife, for our kids, because I'm the only believer in my family. That's what he does all the time, is translate from the gospel. So just put a face with that name.
That's exactly right, yeah.
And I've been keeping up with his Facebook. We'll message each other back and forth. Go ahead.
And he is on fire for Christ.
Yeah, and Lenny is no bigger than Lexi. And his heart is just huge. I've never, ever seen him depressed, discouraged, ever. He is such a positive force. Between the 2 of those guys, they are literally pouring themselves out. That what you see up there represented on the screen is definitely a Paul and Timothy relationship, and they're awesome men.
and they all speak as good or better English than we do.
Amen. Okay, so on the map again, because we're about to start the trek, the Death March of Bataan. In the lower right-hand corner, you see that little red dot? We're right on the edge of the river. That's a Chinamisa. And we got to get to that first one that's up to the left. We're really trying to get to the second one over there, which is the town of, or the village of Piñal. The locals can do it, it's 12 miles, and they can do it in about 6, 8 hours, okay? And just to humble all of us, I'm going to show you exactly who we're talking about can do that. But the first red dot that you see right there smack in the middle, that's where we end up the first night. So we take off. There's a little bit better picture of it. First dot in the lower right-hand corner. 5 o'clock in the morning, Zach.
Those backpacks didn't stay on y'all's back long, though, did they?
No, they did not. And you say that with a lot of pride because he carried his for the first 5 hours.
And there's run horses.
And Alex, sorry.
So we know we're getting ready to hike. We've been told for a year that it's going to be about 8 hours. Actually, it started out as 5. I think it grew as big as 8. That's what we've been told. And even John, at the end of this trip, is humbled by how long it actually takes us. So we've been planning for this. I mean, since November, I've been going to the gym 3 days a week. I'm trying to get this 51-year-old body in better shape. I'm ready. I've strategically spent hours packing that 35-pound backpack because I didn't want to carry 36 pounds.
Explain to me how he ended up with a 35-pound backpack and the rest
The
of us.
biggest guy with the lightest backpack.
That's right, 45, 47. How much was yours, Zach?
I had the biggest one.
I know.
So
And I'm the littlest.
So all night long, we know that they're going to supply us with a pack animal. They keep telling us horses, but we're in the jungle. We're expecting, llamas for all we know. So we're praying for 1, hoping for 2, because we've got our backpacks. We also have our food. We have our mission supplies. We have glasses. We have Bibles. We have tents. We have our sleeping bags. We've got all this stuff.
And because we're lazy Americans, we have queen-size blow-up air mattresses.
They weren't.
They were not.
First exaggeration. So we get there, and there's 5 horses. You would think that we would be happy. All right, we don't even have to care. I just told you, for a year I've been planning this trip. I'm macho man. I'm a 35-pound pack. I'm walking. You ain't taking my backpack.
We actually fought over who was going to give up their backpack.
No one would give up their backpack first because we fought over it. I praise God that I let my ego go and give up my backpack because I would not have made it. I wouldn't have made it 2 hours. That's how tough it was. So God knew, another God moment, God knew we needed 5 horses. 1 wasn't going to do it, 2 wasn't going to do it, 5 barely did it. So all of our backpacks, minus a couple of the translators, and should have known something was wrong right at the beginning when the translators showed up with backpacks the size of what we send our kids to school with, and they were going the same way I was going.
Or plastic sacks.
Or a plastic sack. You see the guy with the plastic sack? That was his luggage for the time. So, so there was a couple of the small backpacks, but we couldn't get everything on there. So, and then the 2 young, strapping young men said, we'll carry ours. So our thought was, we'll rotate them. So every hour, every half hour, every 5 minutes, whatever it took, we just rotate those backpacks amongst us, and the 17 of us would help carry those couple backpacks. And everything else went on horses. And off we went.
You notice that it's dark. It's 5 o'clock.
It's 5.
By the time, you can tell that there are Americans involved in this because by the time we started walking.
No. If they told us it was going to take 2 hours for them to pack up or something, it took 8. So they told us to be ready at 5 to pack up, and we were going to leave at like 5:30. Well, about 6:30 rolls around, and they finally strapped the rest of the stuff on the horses. And we get to take this picture. This is right before we go into the jungle.
We're looking strong, aren't we? We're ready.
And it took about 30 minutes to figure out this is really going to be rough. Because when we were walking, you can't see, I'm sure there'll be pictures of it, but right inside that grass there, on the other side of those trees, the mud begins. It's about anywhere from ankle deep to knee deep, and it was the whole way.
We would have periodic moments where it would be dry, kind of like you see right there, kind of dry, and we'd go, we got through the muddy part. No more mud. And then we'd come around the corner and there'd be more mud. And it was uphill, downhill, flat, in the water, out of the water. It was just mud.
You guys see how tall Paul is there in the middle, right? In the blue? You see how tall he is, okay?
He is named Alex, so.
Okay, now look at the next picture. And the reason I point that out to you is you see the little fella in green?
That's who's guiding the horse.
That's who's guiding the horses.
He might have been 8 years old.
He might have been 8 years old, okay, the entire way. And they beat us, first day easily by 3 hours. And he was not riding.
Guiding the horses were always hours ahead of us.
So those are the translators. You remember all their names?
The guy in the pink was my translator. That's Roger. And then the dude behind him is the pastor. That's Junior, right?
Yep.
Junior.
And then Lenny on the far right, the USA shirt, which was awesome.
And Max is mine in the gray.
The guy wearing the soccer stuff, that's my translator. His name is Christian. And then John is in the back back there in the white shirt.
And my translator's not here. He's Donnie. And I'll just share this now. Y'all know this is what I wear every day, right? Crocs. That's all I wear. Wear it to work. I even have a pair of, there you passed it. I even have a pair of work Crocs that I wear flying, okay? I did not wear Crocs on the trip. I wore hiking shoes. I had a pair of Crocs that I wore when we were in the villages. God is awesome. And he has an incredible sense of humor. We don't select our translators. They get given to us. And I don't know how John decides who gets what translator. John doesn't know me very well from my United States life. That's Donnie. If you notice what he's wearing a set of blue Crocs. That's the only pair of shoes the man has. He wore those blue Crocs all the way through the Amazon jungle.
That video where you saw us marching through the mud,
Oh yeah,
I
or
cut off-
carrying them if it was too deep.
I cut off part of it in order to make it fit in the video. But at the beginning of it, Donnie's in front. And he gets to the mud, and he reaches down and he takes off his blue Crocs, and he goes through the mud barefooted. And then he puts his Crocs back on.
So at the end of the trek, I said, okay, I got to see it. Let me see your feet. I knew they had to be blistered, cut up, scratched, not a scratch on them. He walked through the mud barefoot with Crocs. I lost my shoes twice in the mud.
Speaking of which,
it just sucks them right out. Yeah, that's one of them.
And they lay those trees across the mud like you can actually walk across those. Like there'd be a guy in front of me, like one of the translators, the pastors, and they just kind of run across it. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? It's this wide. So we ended up just walking in the mud.
So this boat is kind of fun. I'm putting my shoe back on, and this is like 30 minutes into the trip, and it's already started. Someone should have told us right now that we're not going to make it the first day. So there's Lenny, and the reason you see Lenny putting his boot back on because he's busy laughing at me trying to put my shoe back on. So immediately within 30 minutes, we're losing footwear in the mud. That's how thick it is.
This is right after those pictures. We hadn't made it really to the jungle yet, but I mean you can see how thick it is right there. It's like we were walking. Most of the time you couldn't see 10 feet in front of your face. I mean,
It wasn't made for people 6 foot tall, I can tell you that.
You got slapped in the face a couple times. Yeah. But the horses were in front of us. Now, one of the pastors, Samuel, who we have put on a pedestal, and you'll see why later, nicknamed him Rambo. He was our pastor, one of the 5 pastors, but he was also our guide. He knew where we were going. He knew the trail. And the trail was, most of the time you knew what the trail was. But every once in a while it would split. It'd have a Y in it or sometimes a W in it. And Samuel, most of the time, was yards ahead of us. He had a rusty old machete, and he would chop down the trees that got in the way. I saw him take out a tree this wide in 6 flights with a machete, and his arm didn't stop. He did it faster than you guys can do with a chainsaw, how fast he would do that tree. But sometimes he would be so far ahead of us, clearing the path and making sure the path is clear, that we couldn't even see him. So we'd get to a Y, and we'd start, I don't know, are we on the right one? Are we, we'd whistle, we'd yell, we'd scream. So we got to understand that the horses were ahead of us. So we just looked down on the mud. If we didn't see any horse tracks, we're on the wrong trail. We'd back all up, regroup, and go down the other trail. We did that a couple times. But that changes in a little while.
river crossings became blessings because it was an opportunity to wash mud off. I think I spent the first 2 hours tiptoeing around trying to stay clean. expending more energy in those 2 hours. And finally, we just gave in and was through the mud.
And that's what we drank. This is just an example. This came out of the Buffalo River. That didn't come from the Amazon. But this came from the Buffalo River. And that's what we drank. So every time we came to a water crossing, we would fill our bottles up and drink. So I will get to this later.
I show you these so that you can remember the smiles on these faces.
Because they go away.
Okay.
They go away. I've been on mission trips before, and I told Paul, I said, I think you do this on purpose. That you try to fly into a country and you're jet lagged, you're tired, they give you about an hour of nap, and you got to go right out to the village, you're going to go spread the gospel. And I told him, I said, you do this on purpose to wear us out tired so that we have to focus on not our ability, but God's ability. And he laughs. He says, no, it's just the way it works out. But I tell you what, God used this trip to, one, build the team. Those 17 people became a team by the end of this trip before we got to the first village. And two, it physically, spiritually, mentally wore us out. So that by the time we got the chance to say Jesus' name to the first person, we had no energy left. We could not capably do it. So we had to rely on God. And he definitely had a plan through this 8-hour trip. He hadn't figured out to get this 98-hour trip.
So we're just getting deeper in the jungle. These were not fun locations. Anytime there were no trees, it was a swamp.
And hot.
Temperature raised anywhere from 10 to 15 degrees every time we walk up underneath the canopy.
You can see right there, Dad walking through the mud, and it's up to his knees. And that was like Gary said, you get a dry spot, probably like a 50-yard long dry spot, and then you walk through 300 yards of mud, and then a little dry spot. So that's pretty accurate of what mostly we walked through, was ankle to knee-deep mud the whole way.
When we were preparing, we were thinking Amazon is going to be flat. We're on the edge, remember, of the highlands. So there's these ridges, and we had to get over the last ones. So there were ridges that we were climbing that were easily 600, 700 feet, straight up and straight down with mud. And I don't know who took this picture. I think this is Gary's picture. He's looking down, and it's a good 80 feet down there to the bottom, and then back up, and then back down, and then back up. It wasn't until the second day that we got to any place that was flat.
There's that mud.
Yeah, that's one of those ridges that's easily a good 200 feet up. And you can see everybody's using it with their pack animals and stuff like that, so it's just all tore up.
And remember, the horses are in front of us. So we got 5 horses and 5 men, or boys, have gone through before us. So even if it wasn't all that bad an hour ago, it's a lot worse now by the time we get there.
Larry?
Every once in a while, we would meet people coming the other direction.
Yeah. Mostly ones and twos.
Yeah, nothing as large of a group as we were.
Now, and normally they were carrying something like a big old stalk of plantains or something else like that, going from one village to the next, normally to trade or something like that.
So, before we get to that picture, so the mud, you didn't want to get muddy all the time. It was getting tiring. It was getting, so you would try to hop skip through what you thought were dry areas. And then every once in a while you get to a spot and it was like, there's no dry areas left. And you just, I would just drop my head down and just go. And just sludge through as fast as you could get to the other side. And then pray that there's some dry area for a while so you could sludge through the next section.
For me, that was one of the spiritual moments, was when I finally got to the point to where I realized that this was a physical example of surrendering to something that I really didn't want to surrender to, which is just walk. You're going to get muddy. Just surrender to the idea. because we spent so much energy trying to be clean and stay out of it. It's another example, one of those big old clearings. It was from where Zach and I are, which is right down there next to that tree. And I think Alex is already in front of us. And Gary is just in the left. You can see his shirt.
This is my picture, and it's me and John. And by this time, John Linares, the guy we introduced you to, he was always in the back. So we had our guide, who was in the front. And then John, being a leader, was always at the back and made sure that everyone was accounted for. So he was always in the back. I, at one point, was probably close to the front. I am starting to get to a physical exhaustion at this point, and I'm now with John. So I stopped and took this picture because that's the entire team. It's one of the only times on the entire trip that I could see the first horse all the way to the last man.
They left us Americans behind. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we were always generally in the back. So I love that picture because it shows how spread out we are. That's 17 people, 5 horses.
And I love this photo because it shows the transition.
There's no more smile. That's focus.
It looks like shock to me, bro.
All that mattered was left, right, in, out. If you could breathe and walk, that's all you had to do.
All right. Who all saw this picture on Facebook and thought it was the coolest picture you saw?
It's funny now, it wasn't then.
Okay. So
We
now
thought
I'm
we
going to
were
break
going to
this.
carry him out, so we were really worried.
Yeah, say that again.
So we thought we were going to carry you out.
Okay. So everyone thought this was a cool picture, kind of like the video of me laying down in the river and pay close attention. Nobody's smiling. I'm white. I'm dizzy. I'm nauseous. And I'm about 30 minutes from heat stroke. The jungle won. And this is at about hour 6?
Yeah.
Yeah, about hour 6. That backpack that I was Macho Man going to carry, wouldn't have made it. Wouldn't have made it even a tenth to how far we've gotten.
And it wasn't because Gary was out of shape. It happens to the biggest guy, biggest engine, producing the most heat. So God took Gary down on purpose.
On purpose.
In order to slow the rest of us down. Because the rest of us were hurting too. We sang that song, 10,000 Reasons, for a reason. Before this happened, I'm in the back, and Gary is right in front of me. And the only person behind us is John. And I've had enough. I am literally, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually at the end of my rope. I'm not in physically as bad shape as it quickly becomes apparent that Gary is. But I'd had enough. And I'm literally thinking, man, what have you done? This is the dumbest idea. What were you thinking? This can't possibly, I'm just being transparent. This can't possibly be worth it. And John's behind me. And I'm not really paying too close attention and a little lightheaded and whatnot. And I hear singing in Spanish. And I understand some Spanish. But it takes me literally 2 or 3 minutes to understand. And John's singing in the back. And so I start becoming more aware of what he's singing. And John's singing in Spanish, 10,000 Reasons. And that was the first time that God really got my attention in the jungle. And I thought, literally, oh ye of little faith. And so I laughed at myself, and I started singing 10,000 Reasons in English, along with John singing in Spanish, and decided, who am I to doubt my God?
So
That's why we sang 10,000
That's
Reasons.
why we're saying tonight. So it has a meaning to us now. So after this time, it shows a picture of us all spread out. So we come to, actually I need to stop there for a second. Another God moment. An hour from now, we're going to be walking. And all of a sudden, when I was laying in the river, I don't remember a lot was going on. I was getting pretty dizzy, a little lightheaded. I remember Alex. I remember hearing Alex's voice saying, we need to pray. We need to gather everybody around Gary. We need to pray for him. An hour later, I'm walking, and I'm and I know about what time it is, and I realize that right there is Sunday morning, about 11:30, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And an hour from now, when I'm walking, that realization hit me. You all were here, praying, as I was laying in the bridge. And I got covered in the Holy Spirit when I realized that when Alex said we need to pray for him, the world was. We now realize that the pace we're at is unsustainable. We're not going to make the village in the first day. We're hopefully going to make to where we're going to have lunch the first day.
Yeah.
And they reset the order of march. And they put the translator, and then they put me, and then they put everybody else. So I become the pace setter. And again, my ego's got to get beaten up a little bit, because now I feel like I'm slowing the whole group down.
We're glad you slowed us down.
You were slowing the whole group down, thank you, Jesus.
But
God used Gary for that. And I know he had a message for Gary in the middle of that, but he used Gary for all of our benefit. I mean, sitting there in the middle of the river with Paul like that, we're both talking. I'm sitting there, and that is when Paul is telling me, you know what God's doing, right, Rob? He's using Gary for the rest of us. Don't miss that.
you want to tell them what that is? That?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to know why you guys didn't just put Gary on John.
They were not around, Miss Joanne, they were not around anymore. They were literally gone. They were 3 or 4 hours ahead of us.
On top of that, there were big dogs, so his feet would have touched on each side of it.
They did at one time, John at one time did say, if we catch back up the horses and Gary is still not recuperated enough. And when we slowed the pace down, I got better. Plus sitting in the water for about 45 minutes, I got better. But they did at one point say, if we catch up the horses and Gary's not doing, they couldn't carry me out. I mean, that was...
No, ma'am.
They were...
Paul and I looked at each other and said, if he goes down, we're in trouble.
So they did talk about putting me on a horse, and I whispered in Rob's ear, I said, I've put up with a lot. I've allowed my ego to get beat up a lot on this trip. I've been put in my place a lot on this trip, but I will not get on a horse. So I'm walking through this jungle, or I'm dying in this jungle.
Yes, ma'am.
At some point, our 2 rock stars,
Yeah.
did they have to give up their backpack?
Oh, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, we're...
Okay, so which one of you wants to confess this publicly, or do you want us to tell the story?
Who gave up their backpack first? How did it happen?
Who made you?
We were, I think Zach gave his up about 5:30, and he carried his about 30 minutes longer than I did.
Once I realized you caught up to me, I realized you gave yours up, I gave mine up.
That's my boy.
That's a good example in terms of an accountability partner. Maybe not being the positive influence that they needed to be. So here's a father's story.
Let him go.
All right. Here's a father's story. At the beginning, we're all ignorant. Okay? They want to keep theirs, that's fine. I wasn't happy about giving mine up. Gary wasn't happy about giving his up. About 30 minutes later, it was like, oh, yeah. Okay? So we're marching along, and I understand where they're at, okay? They want to test themselves. They want to be able to be strong, okay? About an hour in, I start encouraging. Not the way that I normally would encourage my son, because he's 20 years old and he's a full-grown man, and he can make his own decisions sometimes. And Gary reminds me a couple of different times not to put him under my thumb, not to ride to ride roughshod over Alex's goal. So I'm patient, but I'm watching Alex, and I'm watching Zach, and I'm okay with it because they're struggling, but they've got it. We get to the first place where we actually take a break, which is at the top of a hill, and there's a small clearing. And Alex comes to the top of it, and he literally can't move anymore.
He's from here to the door. He's from here to the door. You can see the people stop.
And Alex literally can't move. His legs have locked up on him. He's out of all of his potassium. His muscles are flooded with lactic acid. He literally can't move anymore. And I walk up to him, and Gary's right next to him. And this is the moment where Rob gets in the flesh. And I'm just being honest with you. I wasn't proud about it. I walk up to Alex, and I look him in the eye, and Gary's standing behind him, and he looks at me, and he begins to give me advice about how to be gentle towards Alex. And I said, verbatim, Gary, how about you let me be his dad? And Gary, with all the grace in the world, smiled at me and turned and slowly walked away. Because what he should have done is pop me right in the mouth, but he wasn't going to do that in front of my son. And Alex, without any fight, gave up his backpack. We got a little bit farther up, and we were with everybody else, and Zach gave his up. And from that point on, we rotated them around. I'm not proud of that moment.
One of the first people who grabbed one of the backpacks was Samuel, our rock star, our Rambo, our guide, our hero. He ended up carrying that backpack, probably the majority, one of the backpacks.
Oh, yeah.
Majority of the rest of the trip. And we'll get to the other one here in a little while.
So this is the first clearing where we ended up spending the first night. We got there, it was supposed to be our lunch stop,
Okay,
and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So, Samuel's carrying one of the backpacks. And now at this point, Samuel's with us. You know, I said before he'd be way ahead of us and we have to whistle or catch or whatever. He's with us now, because now I'm right behind him. He realizes the pace has slowed down. He's there. In between me and Danny, as far as he gets away. And we cross a river. He said, everyone fill up your bottles, because we won't have another opportunity for water for at least 2 more hours. We're getting away from where the river is.
Which in their terms, 6 to 8 hours.
So we're going, our path is going to take us away from the river. We've been kind of with the river. Now our path is going to go away from it. So he says, fill everything up, and then we start going. All of a sudden, I look ahead of me, and Samuel's gone. He's gone. I'm screaming, I'm yelling, I'm whistling, I'm everything I can do to try to let him know that, hey, we're still back here, slow down, turn around, come back. He's gone.
And he's red now, but it's not because of heat stroke.
Now, I'm getting angry. I'm getting fleshly. You sorry, no good. You left us in the junk. And I'm getting angry. And I'm getting angrier, and I'm getting angrier. And all of a sudden, we stop and we take a break. During this break,
It's John.
there's 16 of us.
Yeah.
There's 16 of us standing around one backpack. Okay? No one will carry it.
The guy who's carrying it's John, and John says, all right, somebody needs to take this. I can't carry it anymore. Literally 16 of us for a good 8 to 10 seconds stared at each other. It was like, I mean, and it wasn't funny at that point. It was like, seriously, nobody can take it. And we're sitting there, well, what are we going to do? We got a 45-pound pack, and nobody's in shape to carry it. And then,
Out of nowhere comes Samuel with no backpack and 2 1-gallon jugs of water running through the jungle. He realized that when he said it was 2 hours before he gets to the next place, he was wrong. It's probably going to be closer to 3. We were out of water, and he knew that we weren't capable of continuing anymore. It's not a God moment. So he ran ahead. He left us in the jungle on a path that he knew we were going safe on. And he ran ahead, dropped the backpack, found 2 jugs, filled them full of river water, and ran back in the jungle to meet us. At the same moment, 16 grown men were looking at a 45-pound backpack saying, we can't do it.
and about 100 yards behind him was one of the other pastors
With a horse.
With a horse, bringing a horse.
To carry all the rest of the stuff that we were carrying. He grabbed that 45-pound backpack, filled all our jugs with his water bottles, and put on that 45-pound backpack, and off he went again.
And we were probably, how far, Zach, do you think we were from? It wasn't very far before we got here.
It's like 30 minutes or an hour.
Yeah.
So, he was awesome.
Back all that stuff you said about it.
I got humbled again. If you haven't figured it out yet, I get humbled a lot on this trip.
That was one of my favorite parts was, we always get together and sing, because they'd be singing in Spanish, and we were singing in English, but that was one of my favorite parts, was singing with them.
That guitar you see is Jordan's. It's a 3/4 size guitar that he brought from Dallas through the Amazon jungle, on those boats, on those horses, on backs, on boats, in trucks, in airplanes, all the way through the entire jungle. And he must have been covered by the same prayer you gave, because that guitar did not have a scratch on it when it got done. And it was a blessing. You wouldn't think a simple little wooden guitar would be a blessing in the Amazon jungle, but we gravitated around that guitar every chance we had and sang praises in Spanish and English. A lot of times we would pick a song that we knew by heart, kind of, in English, and they knew by heart in Spanish, and they would be singing in Spanish and we would be singing in English at the exact same time. And there's no doubt their angels were smiling. The glorious sound was coming out of the jungle during those times. But this first camp, remember I told you, 15 people on that bus don't know anybody? That's the team.
We were all big buddies now.
All men on this team, okay? All men on this team. At this point, when we first get there, everybody is shedding clothes like nobody's business. Looked like a tornado, okay? This is as close. There are less than PG photos that you are never going to see. And Lenny's standing in the background right there, and he's wrapped up in the towel. So we first get there.
You're not supposed to tell this story.
I'm not telling that story.
Oh, okay.
That story's never being told again. Never. So we get there, and Paul and John decide, look, it's 3 hours to the next one. That put us there at 6 o'clock. The sun's going down. We don't have the strength to make it. That's best case scenario. If something happens, it's going to be longer. We're spending the night here. So we tell everybody we're staying here tonight. There's a river down the hill. You can't see it so much, but if you see right in the middle, the hut right in the middle, look just to the left, and you see an opening in the trees that's got a sort of a dark part and a tan part to it. That's the river. And it's down from us. So I don't know if he had to go down to use the facilities or whether he was just going down there to find out whatever. But Gary goes down that hill, and he's gone about 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden, at the top of his lungs, you hear, "Glory!" And Gary has got in the water, and it's an awesome bathtub sort of. There was bedrock in these streams, which I never expected. So Gary's down in there. That was all it took. Everybody was headed to the river in order to strip and cool off. And then later we came up here and we cooked sort of a makeshift supper and sang songs and stuff like that.
Those are our horse guides.
So that's the father and his 4 sons in descending age order to the youngest, which is 8 in the green shirt behind there. Those are the guys who led the horses.
In flip-flops.
Enos. No.
So
Everybody's expectation was that we're going to see lots of wildlife, and Paul does not like snakes, doesn't like snakes less than Jill likes snakes, which is saying something.
the thing I tell everyone about the snakes and the wildlife, I saw a lot of birds. Beautiful. I mean, just gorgeous birds. I don't think we saw any wildlife of any kind.
Yeah,
I seen one monkey in the village.
Yeah, but that was
It was
a
a
tame
pet.
monkey. It was a pet.
It wasn't tame, it was just chained in the house.
It was not happy.
But we didn't see any. You guys said you saw one 8-inch dead snake. I never saw it.
Yeah, I never saw it.
Okay, someone said they saw an 8-inch dead snake. I personally never saw a snake the entire time we were there. And at one point we were walking through elephant grass, probably up to about our chin, up chest, chin high, where you really couldn't see your feet. You kind of make out the path you were walking on, but you couldn't see your feet. And we got to the next time we were breaking, I was talking to Paul, and I was like, how many snakes did we walk past? So they're there.
Leave that part out.
I honestly, we're right on the edge of the Amazon. There are settlements in that area. I just honestly think that they've been that anything that's big enough to eat has been caught and eaten.
Well, not everything.
Well,
There's another story we won't talk about.
okay, this is the second day. Yes, ma'am.
If the grass was this high on you, what about those short people?
Alex,
to deal with it.
You're just looking in front. You're just looking at the guy in front of you.
Watching the grass move.
I mean, literally, the trail was no wider than the space in between rows of chairs here in some places.
Left, right, in, out.
It didn't matter where the trail
Left, right,
was.
in, out.
Yeah.
Breathe in, breathe out.
Yeah, well, oddly enough, helicopter pilot. Figure that out. So this is the second day, still mud. But there were treats along the way on the second day.
Samuel, we were walking, and he just like walks off the side of the road and starts beating on this tree with his machete. And he comes back over there and has a bushel of bananas that's this big round. And they were like, not like bananas you've ever eaten before either.
Zach, you want to talk about the bananas?
I don't eat fruit at all, and that was amazing. I don't know if it's because I was dying, but it was really good.
That banana, you can see it's not really that big, but it was the sweetest thing. Way better than any banana I've ever had. And the other one in there, that's either a lime or a lemon. They kept calling it limon. I'm pretty sure that's just Spanish for lime. I'm pretty sure it was a lime. But we were cutting those things open and sucking on that stuff along the way. It was great. There's an example of one of the trails.
This is right before we got to the first village. We went on the other side of this river and then went back up probably 10 minutes and we were there. But that was it was nice because we were there.
This is where Gary decided to take that impromptu sit-down cool-off that you saw in the video.
Yeah, what you don't see in the video is 16 more people joined me soon after that, when they realized. So just before this river crossing, so we're getting ready to go into the first village, Pinal. This is where we're going to set up camp the first time we finally made where we said we were going to get in an 8-hour trip. 12 hours later, day and a half of traveling. Prior to this, we came out of a clearing, out of the jungle, into a clearing, and it was some farms and some animals and some huts, and we could see them. And as soon as I saw that, I went into an uncontrollable, Holy Spirit-led prayer. I couldn't stop talking. I was praying out loud as I could. It was like God brought me to this village, and we're there. And it was another God moment where I just could not stop myself from openly praying, praising God, praising Christ, praying these people would accept us, would accept the gift of salvation we would bring, accept our love. I mean, just nonstop as long as and then we left the little village. And we started crossing the river. I'm like, well, wait, the village was back there, guys. It was just a couple of houses on the outskirts of the village. And then we went through the river, and then we come around the corner, and then here's Pinal. But it was awesome. When I got out of the jungle into that first village, it was uncontrollable praise that I'll remember.
Okay, so I'm not prone to prophecy. I didn't mean this to turn into the lengthy slideshow that it has turned into because it's 7:45, so we're going to have to move a little bit. So this is Pinal. The white square that you see on the upper left is that soccer/basketball court you saw in the video.
Where we got our butts kicked.
Yeah. There's a long, basically pole barn, and that's where we spent the next 2 days.
This is laundry day.
As soon as we got into the village and got there and John and Paul had talked to the chief, the village leader, we settled into that